Hi, everybody. Welcome to Don't Be Afraid of the Schwa. My name is Kim Noah. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So, I am an Orton-Gillingham Academy ATF, which means Accredited Training Fellow. And I've been doing OG for about 10 years now. And what I've noticed is that a lot of people are afraid to teach the Schwa and they avoid it. So that's what gave me the idea to do this workshop. So let's take a look here and let's think about the most common vowel sound in the English language. What do you think it is, right? The most common letter in the English language, as far as vowels go, is the E. But the most common vowel sound is And it's kind of like the utterance that we make when we're trying to think of a word, like what should I do? It sounds like the short U, but it's usually softer and weaker. Okay. And it's called the schwa. So from Edema Online, if we talk about the origin of the schwa, right, it's that natural vowel that's often found in the weak, unstressed syllables. And it's actually from Hebrew, okay, which is pretty interesting. I didn't know that originally when I started learning about this. So this is kind of how I explain it to the kids, right? When the vowels are tired, they sit down and say, ugh. I call it the lazy vowel sounds. And I like to shrug my shoulders to make that gesture for this sound. So unstressed words and syllables are usually said faster and at a lower volume than stressed words or syllables. So as a result, right, that vowel sound in the unstressed syllable can lose its purity. And that's how we get the schwa sound. So let's take a look at this sentence. Somebody had posted this on social media, and I liked it, so I figured I would share it with you. Can you count how many schwas are in this sentence? The dragon traveled on a dented wagon to Alaska, holding the ballot box that he tied with a purple velvet ribbon. Give you a second to try to count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. 10 schwas. We're going to see them in two-syllable words, right? Dragon. It's not dragon, it's dragon. That second syllable gets weaker, the vowel gets lazy, and it doesn't make its pure sound. The reason why this happens is called the principle of least effort. So that kind of refers to the ease of articulation. It describes how speakers of a language naturally want to spend the least amount of effort possible to make the sounds. So basically, the mouth wants to do what's easiest. We want to do what's easiest to pronounce. So if we try to read that sentence below, right, without the schwas, they wanted to wear a red velvet dress to the prom. Sounds really awkward, right? Our natural speech, when we're saying sentences, there's going to also be something called sentence stress, which we're going to talk about, which also has to do with certain words that we say, with a little bit more emphasis. So using that weaker sound, that weaker vowel sound, it makes it quicker and easier to say. Ava wanted to wear a red velvet dress to the prom. We don't have to add that extra emphasis on certain syllables. So again, what is this schwa? It is so elusive. It really saves us time when we speak because we can glide over those unstressed syllables. And in fact, some unstressed syllables actually disappear when we speak fast. And the purpose is also to save us energy, to minimize the effort, right? We're going to just produce a quick, soft sound without having to move our mouth very much, right? So let's kind of think of a couple words like caramel. In caramel, there technically is three syllables, but we usually say caramel. We skip that middle syllable. At least with my Long Island accent, we do. In some parts of the country, again, it could be pronounced a little bit differently. Separate, it's spelled separate, but because we say the word quickly, we reduce that middle syllable. Same thing with chocolate. We don't say chocolate, we say chocolate. Want to make it quick, right? So the reason why we have the schwa is it's really all about rhythm too. English is a stress time language. So words with more than one syllable have stressed or accented and unaccented. I'm sorry. Yeah, unaccented or unstressed syllables. Syllables are different lengths, and we stress one syllable at a time. So typically, words that communicate the most important parts of the sentence or of the message, like nouns, your main verbs, and adjectives, those are going to be stressed in a sentence, right? Function words like pronouns, articles, those little words, prepositions, conjunctions, they are not usually stressed. So, in order to maintain a regular rhythm in the language, that's what we need to do, right? Okay. So students are going to learn that tricky word, the and these are articles, so they're often unaccented, right? That's why we kind of hear that sound there. But typically we only hear the schwa in two syllable words. So again, stress time language. I saw this on social media from Orton-Gillingham Mama. I loved this. I thought it was cute. So this is the 80s version of the song, not the Katy Perry version, right? I apologize. I'm going to sing a little verse of it. I am not a singer. So it's the eye of the tiger. It's the thrill of the fight, right? So eye of the tiger, those words, eye and tiger, are stressed more when we listen to those song lyrics. That's the main part of that lyric, right? I and tiger. Those other words like the, of, um, those are unstressed in a sentence. It's those content or important words in a sentence that are stressed. So that's just a little bit of about the difference between content words and function words and how English is a stress time language. And we have that rhythm when we speak. Okay. So stressed versus unstressed. What you can do is have your students stretch out the stressed or the accented syllable. So those stressed or accented syllables last longer, they sound louder, and they're higher pitched. We fully pronounce the vowel, and the vowels are more likely to make their regular sound. Like think of the word computer, computer. We can stretch out that stressed or accented syllable, computer. So in computer, that second syllable is stressed. The other syllables are shorter and quicker, right? Another word for unstressed syllable is unaccented. Those are said faster, quieter, less emphasis on the vowel sounds, and the vowel will make its lazy sound. Usually the schwa says but it can also make some other sounds. So I just wanted to give you some examples here. I usually just teach the or the I sound, right? But is the one that's most common. So I think the question that I get asked the most is, when should I teach the schwa? Okay, great question, right? You can teach this as soon as you teach two-syllable words. You can start teaching the schwa, right? Um, it's never accented. That's why we don't usually see it in a one-syllable word. Okay. You can start weaving this in as soon as you teach suffixes, right? So I usually start introducing this when I teach suffix ed saying id, or when I teach VCCV words, vowel consonant consonant vowel words. So my fellow that trained me, Jenny Miller, she liked to have the kids tornado the accented syllable. And I like this idea. Typically, when you look in the dictionary and you look for the accent mark, it looks like a little apostrophe. That can kind of get a little cluttery. And then they can confuse it for a slash, depending on, and then like, does it go before the syllable, after the syllable? We want to keep it easy for our kiddos, right? So they can tornado the accented syllable, right? So in the word magnet, is it magnet or magnet? Which syllable is getting the accent? Magnet. We're stretching, we're saying that first syllable longer with more emphasis. That's why I tornadoed it. It's a closed syllable. The second syllable, that E is saying it, magnet. It's not saying its usual F sound because it's unaccented and it has the schwa. I don't always have them mark the schwa unless they really are struggling to hold on to it, and their working memory is really weak. But typically, I just have them label the vowels, with their syllable types. But you can have them, make that upside down backwards E if you wanted to. So rabbit words are the best place to start, if not with suffix ed. So what you can do here is when you have them read these words, if you notice that they're struggling to pronounce them correctly because they're not accenting the correct syllable, that's when we need to teach accenting. And we might need to teach them to tornado the accented syllable. Okay. So if we take a look at that first word, right? Rabbit. Which syllable is said louder with more emphasis? The first one, rabbit. The second syllable, if I'm going to say it incorrectly, I feel like when you say it incorrectly, that's how sometimes you can hear the difference. Okay. Is it rabbit or rabbit? Right? It's rabbit, not rabbit. So that second syllable, has an I, short I vowel, but it's actually the same sound as the schwa. Okay. Let's look at the next one, which was in the other example, velvet. It's not velvet, it's velvet. That second syllable has less emphasis because it's unaccented. We don't say kitten, we say kitten. That E is saying it. All right. How about this one here? We don't say katan. If they're saying katan, then you need to talk about accenting. And you need to talk about how in that second syllable, that vowel gets lazy and starts to schwa. And that's where you can have them tornado the accented syllable, right? Um, the tornado again is helpful. Do I normally have them do this on a whole page? No, that becomes tedious. But I just wanted to show you how I will have them identify that accented syllable. Okay. And you're going to notice a pattern here with all these words, right? Which syllable is accented in all of these? First one. Is that always going to be the case? No. But in two syllable words, typically the first syllable is accented. But there are about 7 accenting rules, and we'll talk a little bit more about those in a bit. Okay. So you can't teach the schwa without teaching accent. I have a handout which I will share with everybody. It basically has the 50 states on it. I find that this is a great way to explain accenting. When I was in second grade, I learned the 50 state song. And actually, I'm going to pull it up to show you in a moment. So I learned them in alphabetical order. And I still remember them to this day. Again, I'm not going to sing this, but I'm going to just show this to you. So something you can do, and I've done this with my ESL students too when I taught at some local colleges with adults, because pronouncing the states is very difficult. Like Kansas and Arkansas, go figure, right? With the spellings and the pronunciation. So this is the 50 state song. It's all in alphabetical order. But let's just start with the A's, right? Alabama, right? So if we're going to show the accented syllable in Alabama, Alabama, we can have them practice stretching out that accented syllable. Alabama. Where do you hear the schwa? I hear the schwa at the end of Alabama. Can there be more than one schwa? Yes. And just keep in mind that proper nouns don't always follow the rules. But let's look at Alaska. Alaska. It's that second syllable that's accented. First and last one are going to schwa. Arizona. Which syllable's getting the accent? Arizona. It's zo that I'm stretching out, right? That's the accented syllable. Arkansas. Arkansas is a hard one, right? That first syllable is getting the accent. Okay. If you want to sing the 50 state song just for fun, Alabama and Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, and Connecticut, and more. Not going to do the whole thing, but that's how it goes. You could probably look it up on YouTube, but it's how I memorize all the states. Again, it's a great way to kind of explain accenting a little bit, or you can even explain it with their last names or their first names and things like that, just to make it a little bit more personalized for them. But just don't be afraid of the schwa. That's the important thing, right? So again, you got to teach accent, right? So let's take a look here. This is one of the accent tools. First one is we usually accent the root and not the prefix or suffix. So if we look at unlock it, right? The base word is getting the accent, not locking. Retract it. The root track is getting the accent, right? So it's that base word, that important part of the word. Suffixes and prefixes usually don't get the accent. Okay. In two-syllable words, usually the first syllable gets the accent, like in magic, candid. It's not candid. It's not magic. The accent's on the first syllable. Okay. And a lot of prefixes like re, you're going to hear them actually schwa. Like it's not retracted, it's retracted, right? Okay. So some common locations for the schwa, again, second syllables, prefixes, suffixes, any inflectional endings. Okay? Some people really struggle to hear the accent, right? So, and again, what is dyslexia, right? It's a struggle to hear the patterns in words and see the patterns in words. So they might not always hear that accent. So let's do some examples here of some tricks that might help hear the accent. And just keep in mind, some adults struggle to hear the accent as well, and that's okay, right? So you can do the whisper trick, right? So let's try with someone's name. Jordan, Jordan. So if I'm saying the name Jordan and I'm doing it to whisper, my first syllable is a little louder than the rest. I can clap it. Jordan, Jordan. My first clap is louder because that's the accented part of the syllable. You can do the head thrust, Jordan, Jordan. Personally, I like the chin bump because I feel like it's a little bit more kinesthetic. They're putting their hand on their chin to feel it go down. So Jordan, Jordan. That first syllable, the chin drops down because it's said with more emphasis. You could do it in an angry voice, Jordan. When you do it in that angry voice, you're yelling that first syllable, right? Jordan. You could also do call the dog. Jordan, Jordan, right? That first syllable is stretched. It's accented. So pick the one that you like best. Pick the one that helps you and your student hear the accent. That's all. And just remember, Schwas are never stressed. That's why I don't want you to be stressed about teaching this. You don't need to do a lesson on Schwa. You're going to just be weaving it in and out. Okay. And I'll give you some more examples of that. So, the Reading League, which is a great peer-reviewed reading journal, Kara Arduengo and Doring Dorfman said that teaching schwa syllables in groups that are spelled similarly can help students learn the hardest skill of schwa, how to spell it, right? That's usually the hardest part, spelling it. So one way to do that is to teach schwa endings in groups. Okay, and I'm going to give you an example. Let's do a little guided discovery. I'm going to say 3 words and I want you to listen and repeat. Okay. Ticket, helmet, bucket. Did you hear what those 3 words had in common? I'm going to say them again. Ticket, helmet, bucket. They're all 2 syllables, right? But they also all end with the it sound, right? Then I would show them the words. I'm going to read them together. And we would divide these, code divide and label them. Take a look at what they all have in common. They all end with ET. So in ticket, that first syllable gets the accent, and that second one is going to okay. Helmet. First syllable gets the accent, second syllable unaccented in schwas because it's not helmet, it's helmet. And bucket. Not bucket. First syllable gets the accent, second one schwas, bucket. So they all have the it sound. You can teach this as a spelling generalization. If you hear it at the end of a 2-syllable word, spell it with ET. So if they hear a word with 2 syllables and they hear it at the end, they're going to learn that it's going to sound be spelled with an ET and not an IT. And in your visual drill, you can make an ET card for them. And they can say, ET says it in a 2-syllable word. I think the only word that might not work, like bandit, in the word bandit, it's spelled with IT. But for the most part, this is a great generalization to teach. If we take a look here at some ET words, there are actually a lot of them. When I was first teaching this to a student, I showed a clip from the movie E.T. and I realized they have no idea who E.T. is. This was so long ago, so before their time. And actually E.T. is kind of creepy when I rewatch the trailer. But these are what I call ET words, and it's just, again, great way to introduce the schwa. You're going to notice that they're all VCCV words as well. So once you've taught that syllable division pattern, they can easily divide these and read these. Okay. All right. And again, you want to ask those cognitive questions like, oh, why is it spelled with ET and not IT? Oh, because it's unaccented. It's schwas, right? Something else to consider, word choice, when it comes to reading versus spelling. Which words might be great for spelling? Actually, let me reverse that. Which ones are better for reading than for spelling? Give you a second to look at them. When I have them spelling, I probably wouldn't want to give them a word at the beginning like nugget or mallet or mullet because they might not know to double those medial consonants. So those might be better words to give for reading, and then give words like casket, velvet, or musket for spelling. All right, just kind of something to keep in mind. And then when we talk about word choice here, let's take a look at some of these, which I think word choice is such a common pitfall for new OG practitioners, right? If we look at this list, there are a couple words in here, that shouldn't be here. They're not appropriate if I'm teaching VCCV words. Let's see if we can take a look at why. So I put a little asterisk next to them, right? So bullet. Why does that not, that one doesn't play fair? Because bull is a learned word or a trick word, right? It's phonetically irregular. It's not saying it's saying So that probably wouldn't be a great one to give for reading. Closet, bad one to give because it's a VCV word, not VCCV. So just be careful. And some people consider ET a suffix. You could just call it an ending pattern if you'd like to make it easier. So we can teach them ET. We can also teach another spelling pattern, words that end with OM. Same thing. When you hear at the end of a two-syllable word, it's going to be spelled with OM, not UM. So random, seldom, fandom, wisdom, custom, freedom. Most of these, not all of them, most of them are VCCV. There are a couple of exceptions here. And then we have the, Y saying it in the middle of a closed syllable, a couple other things going on. But you can kind of teach this as a spelling pattern, as a word family, so that they know when they hear after a two-syllable word, it's spelled with OM. So you don't have to worry about them mixing up that schwa, because that O is going to schwa. Same on the same lines of that, ON, bacon, demon, button, talon. When you hear in at the end of a two-syllable word, it's going to be spelled ON, bacon, demon, right? Some of these have more advanced syllable division patterns like VCV and some things like that, but just kind of keep that in mind. And also, when you think of the shuns, Tion, Sion, those have the schwa sound. Tinsi can say sh, and that on says shun. All right, so it's also has to do with schwa because it's unaccented, because it's a suffix. Well, I call them suffixes to keep it easy for the kids. Technically, it's stable syllable. Okay, let's take a look. When we're spelling other words with schwa, that can be challenging. Sometimes it's really helpful to overpronounce them. You can pronounce the stressed vowel or syllable the way it would be pronounced if the vowel was stressed. I'm sorry, I think I said that incorrectly. Pronounce the unstressed vowel or the schwa the way it would be pronounced. So, for example, if I'm having them spell the word velvet, I might say, listen, the word is velvet, but I'm going to pronounce it this way to help you spell it. Velvet. Now write it down. Okay. It's a helpful mnemonic strategy to help them remember how to spell these difficult words. And Aries research supports the use of spelling pronunciations to help them remember spellings, especially words with silent letters or unstressed vowels. And it's basically just deliberately pronouncing the letters as they appear. So like for the word chocolate, you might say chocolate to help them. Remind them it's pronounced chocolate, but I'm going to spell it, say it this way to help you spell it correctly. All right. So it's helpful to sometimes give them that consistent full pronunciation of those letter sounds to help them with schwa, because it is very difficult to spell. But they'll start to realize that certain letters commonly schwa, like A, and there are some other ways that we can help them remember it. So let's take a look here. Where is the schwa, right? If we look at these words, hunted, recall, mistaken, prefixes and suffixes usually schwa because it's not hunted, right? It's hunted. So those endings or those prefixes will typically do that. So if you're teaching suffix ed saying id for past tense, you can tell them, listen, the reason why it doesn't say ed is because that vowel gets lazy. And we just say id. So if you hear id at the end of a word, it's going to probably be spelled ed because it's a suffix. Okay. VCV words. A lot of these are going to have schwas too, right? The accent in a two-syllable word is usually on the first syllable, and the second one usually has the vowel schwa sound. All right. I usually teach the splits together, the split after the vowel and the split after the consonant, because 60% of the time the first syllable's long, but I don't know, I don't really like that percentage. I usually teach them together. Um, but these can be really challenging. The reason is they're often easier to spell than to code, and they have to have a strong vocabulary to be able to read these correctly, right? So I kind of color coded these two lines. I don't know why I use such a similar color, but the first line there, the first two lines are blue, the last two are purple. I group them according to the level of vocabulary. So if I'm working with a student, and they're reading virus as virus because they're not sure where to chop it, they have to be able to recognize that the word virus is how we say the word because they've heard that word before. If I'm working with a first grader, they're probably not going to know the word veto or rivet. So they're not going to know if it's veto or veto or rivet or rivet. So they really need to have a strong vocabulary for when you're teaching these. But in all of these, you're usually going to hear that schwa in that second syllable. It's not rodent, it's rodent, right? That's going to have the I sound. Um, and here we go. So when it's divided after the consonant, um, again, you're going to have to teach them to flex so they know where to divide the word, flex their syllable division muscles, and again, they need to have strong vocabulary because these could be really tricky, right? Okay. The banana generalization. Open A will always change to a schwa at the end of a word. Think of the word panda, umbrella, stigma. Um, Open A at the beginning will usually change, not always, but usually change to a schwa, right? Um, like above or ago, abuse. So when I teach the schwa, what I'll usually do, I don't make a separate schwa card for my visual drill, but since A is the one that commonly will schwa and sound like I'll have them say, when I show them this card, A says A, and And those three dots are on there to remind them that that has three sounds. All right, so we have we have A, and we have And if you want to pair it with keywords, you can. Let's do another guided discovery. I'm going to say three words. I want you to listen and repeat. Ninja, panda, delta. What do you notice? They all end with the sound. And you might also notice that they're all two syllables, which would be great if they noticed that. So then we'd look at these words, we'd read them together, and I would point out how they all, well, hopefully they will notice that they all end with A, and then we can draw the schwa above those A's to help them remember that, hey, when we see A at the end of a word, it's probably going to say And I like to show them Baby Yoda. When A's at the end, he makes his tired, lazy sound. And he's quiet because he's unstressed. And if you want to teach some learned words that relate to that topic, you could actually, well, not the same exact topic, not when he's at the end, that's schwa, but when that schwa is at the beginning, we can do those learned words that I have on the right-hand side, like again, above, among, another, right? Those all start with A. They all happen to also schwa, and they're phonetically irregular. Right? Here's my word list. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. We got soda, tuna, Ava, ninja, mega, sofa, yoga, scuba, cola. Most of these are VCV words. Okay. So if you hear at the end of a word, you're going to spell it with an A. All right. Mark it with a schwa. Here's some connected text. Um, Sandra had a home in Canada. She would take scuba lessons to spot fish in the Canada lakes. Then she got a new job as a tuba player. Sandra and her dog Luna had to move to the coldest state of Alaska. In Alaska, Luna jumps and plays fetch in the snowbanks. When it's too cold, Luna likes to snuggle and cuddle on the sofa next to Sandra's golden tuba. Sandra misses doing scuba lessons, but a friend told her about ice fishing. She plans to cut a hole in the ice with a shovel and dip her fishing pole in the ice cold water. Um, this passage has lots of schwas, has lots of words with a at the end, making that sound. Purpose of connected text is mainly to focus on comprehension. So you really want to ask some good comprehension questions. Do you think Sandra will like ice fishing? Why or why not? And you could have them, make some inferences and go back to the text to help them come up with their answer. Just a fun fact, a lot of countries end with the schwa a. Again, proper nouns don't always follow the rules, but when they do, it's great. Use it to your advantage. But like Australia, Austria, Nicaragua, Colombia, Namibia, India, Russia, China, they all end with that A, making that schwa sound. But did you know that glossy R's can also schwa, right? Suffix OR usually has a similar meaning to suffix ER, right? Someone who, like a collector is someone who collects. So just so that it's not going to be collector, it's not going to be calculator. That OR is going to schwa and it's going to sound like okay? Suffix AR usually means like being or resembling. Um, Sometimes there are just some words with AR as well, and it's not a suffix. But AR is also going to say burglar, dollar, grammar. So explain to them that the reason why it's not burglar, dollar, is because it's unaccented. It has the schwa sound. Okay. But I think at first when I was doing OG, I didn't realize that both the R's can schwa too. I thought it was just the regular. And then consonant LE, right? Every syllable has to have a vowel. So consonant LE has that silent E at the end. But we hear the schwa sound in the consonant LE syllable. Table. Do you hear that sound? Sample, handle. It kind of has that sound. We hear that schwa. Okay. So something I want you to take note of is that when we teach students to spell with meaning and not sound, it's important to explain the schwa. We can't just rely on how a word sounds when we're trying to spell it. We need to think about the structure, the morphology, the etymology, the origin of that word. And that's going to give us some clues to help us spell it. Here's a little quiz for you. Schwa or no schwa? Chihuahua. Do you hear a schwa? I do. At the end of Chihuahua. Applause. I hear a schwa at the beginning, that A. Cobra. Ooh, at the end. Balloons. That first syllable. Dracula. That A at the end. Idea. Again, the A at the end. Koala. Right? That last syllable. Turtle. That consonant LE syllable is going to schwa. Dragon. That second syllable is going to schwa. So if there is a book, which is really cute, the Not So Lazy Schwa, it's a picture book. You could find that on Amazon. It's a way to introduce the schwa. It's written by, I think, I forget her name. It's the same person that, hold on, I'm going to find the name for you, that does a great video on YouTube pronouncing the 44 phonemes. The Not So Lazy Schwa. That is, let's see. on Amazon. Who is the author? Yvette. That's right, Yvette Manning. Or I'm sorry, Yvette Mance. She's the author, and she also has a great YouTube video pronouncing all of the sounds in the English language. I always have my trainees watch her video. And then I did use MegaWords 3 for some resources. There's a section there on Schwa, which is really helpful. And then if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out. I have a Facebook page where I also, post lots of different tips and strategies as well. But I look forward to hearing from you. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation. And I hope you're not afraid to teach Schwa. I hope you give it a try and let me know how it works out.